Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to my 2021 anticipated releases video for the end half of 2021. That is a long title, but I'm basically going to be talking about 5 books that I'm excited for the end half of this year. One of them is fairly soon, so I'm going to talk about that first, and that is Lux by Brandon Sanderson, and this is a Reckoners novella. So if you want to get into Brandon Sanderson and you're worried about how the Cosmere, his magical universe, connects all of his works kind of in the background, and all of his fantasy is so long and multiple perspective, look no further, because Steelheart is the first book in this trilogy. It's a complete trilogy, but this is just a continuation novella that's set in Texas, and so it's only releasing on audiobook in the middle of July, and so that's why I'm putting it on this list now, because if I wait to film this video any longer, it's not going to be an anticipated release anymore because it'll be on my Audible account. I don't know if it's a standalone or if it'll have sequels after it, and I know it's being released to audiobook, and then later down the track it's going to have ebook and physical book releases as well. So I will read it on audiobook, obviously, because that's the only way I can right now, but I'm going to buy the physical copy later down the track when it's available to me. So that is my first one on here, and I have 4 more to talk about. Just for the fun of it, let's go in publication order. The next book comes out on the 14th of September, and it's by Joe Abercrombie, and it's called The Wisdom of Crowds, and this is the most recent book, I think the conclusion to his trilogy of A Little Hatred. And the first book came out at the beginning, I think, of last year, and I've read the first book, the sequel, A Trouble with Peace, and then this book is coming out in September that I'm highly anticipating because I love the way that Joe Abercrombie manages to paint such clear images of his characters. So I can't say too much about A Little Hatred without spoiling his previous books, because while it is set in the same universe with the continuation of a bunch of characters, technically it's with a whole new cast, but some of them are related to the characters that we previously saw. So if you don't want any spoilers at all for the Blade itself, don't start with A Little Hatred, but if you want to jump into Joe Abercrombie and you don't want to read all of his backlog first, you can start there. So it's really up to personal choice. I read from the beginning all the way through, and the audiobooks are incredible, and I'm pre-ordering this next one on audiobook, but I will likely get the physical copy as well. You can see up here on the shelf behind me, I do have the hardcover copy of the first book behind it because shelf space is a thing. I have the paperback of the sequel, and then after that I imagine I'll have the physical copy of the third book as well. I'm really excited for this, and the characters just go in directions that I have no idea how it's going to eventuate, which is why I love his work. It is multiple perspective fantasy, but the way he writes character is so distinguishable, and when you are listening to it or reading it, you just understand the character's voice immediately, and they all sound very, very different, and he really just manages to make that tangible somehow, and I have no idea how he does it, but he's very clever at doing so. And like I said, they always surprise me. I've given the previous 2 in the series, I think, 5 stars each, so I can't wait to experience the next book and the conclusion, I think, to this trilogy, which is going to be wild. Next is a book that comes out on the 5th of October, and that is Daughter of the Deep by Rick Riordan. And I don't know if this is an adult book or if it's a middle grade or young adult book. When I read the blurb, it felt like it was a potential middle grade book because it had a lot of puns in the blurb, and I love puns, don't get me wrong. I was expecting this to be adult though, but if it's not, I don't mind. I read both categories, so it's not really a big drama. I've just got misconceptions about it apparently, but I think it's a retelling of 22,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I actually don't know what that mythology or that tale is about, so I'm going into this pretty much unaware of whatever's going to happen or potentially happen, which I like in a Rick Riordan book, because he just tends to throw you for 6 in the best way that involves adventures and quests and found family and characters and just new experiences, gods and monsters. It's going to be great. So that's why this is on here. I think it's either first in a duology or it's a standalone by him, and this is one of his first books, I think, after he's finished writing about the Percy Jackson world. So I'm excited to see how he branches off from writing about a world that he has been in for a very long time, because I'm sure he'll be great, but I'm interested to see a new experience with his flavour of writing to it. So that's why it is on the list for October. And now we only have 2 left, and the next one is The Fall of the Argosy by Sebastian de Castell, and this comes out, I think, on the 15th of October, and this is a sequel, but it's also a duology, I mean, so there's only the 2 books. So there's Way of the Argosy, and then there's Fall of the Argosy. So they follow Faru Parfax, and I loved her when she was in Spellslinger, so this really follows her origin story. And the tagline for this book, I think, has zombies, mages, and madness in it. And honestly, I'm down for that. I did not expect Sebastian de Castell to write any kind of zombie flair into his work, and I love his characterization, his tone, and his writing style. So I'm really jazzed to read about how he's conveyed like the red plague or something, which is the zombie virus in here. I think it's just a magician's curse rather than an actual zombie plague, but it's going to be interesting because he always writes detail and conflict, tension, and character really well, and obviously that's why I keep going back to his work. So this is another young adult one, and I generally don't go for young adult new releases, but in this case Sebastian de Castell keeps winning me over, so that's why I keep going back to him. And then lastly on this list, I have just realized I've bookended this video with Brandon Sanderson releases, oops, is Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third book in his Skyward series. It's not the conclusion because it's a quartet of books. The next one is out next year, I believe, or maybe the year after, probably next year because he's pretty good with his YA. Cytonic follows Spencer, and because it's part of a series, if I say anything about Cytonic, it's obviously going to spoil Skyward, so don't want to spoil Skyward for you because it's great. So go and read Skyward. It's about Spencer. In her culture, they're humans living on this planet that they found a few generations ago. They're trying to make a living there and make it work, but around the asteroid belt of where they live, there are these aliens called the Krell, and the Krell fight against the humans on Earth. And that's why the humans decide that they need to train up pilots so that they can defend their planet. They all live under the surface, so they avoid the Krell as best they can. But Spencer, obviously, she wants to become a pilot. She wants to follow in her father's footsteps because he used to be a pilot. But the way that this culture works is they really revere bravery and they shun cowardice. And Spencer, unfortunately, her father, he abandoned his flight crew and therefore he was branded a coward and he died in battle. And so now Spencer is branded with that same word, the coward, and she really has to fight and push for this. I'm really looking forward to Cytonic. I gave Skyward a 5. I gave the sequel a 4.5. I'm looking forward to Cytonic because I hope I give that a 5 as well. So that is the end of my list. It is a very short list, so let me know if you have any as well that you would like to suggest down below. I'm all ears, but thank you so much for watching this video. I'll chat to you down in the comments and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.